One, two.
Come hai prendi camera? Do I need to use this? No? Hello? Can everybody hear me? Okay. We have sound. Good. Hello everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to have all of you here today. My name is Jota Trom and I'm the founder of Women in Tech Club. So we have an amazing panel today with different speakers joining us. But before we start, I would like to say a couple of quick thanks. First of all, I would like to thank Telegraph for having us here today. Women in Tech Club has grown to over 700 people in a short period of 4 months. And we needed an amazing venue. So this venue is amazing. So thanks, Telegraph. Special thanks to Ciro Rizzo for all his help in organizing everything. Please. I also want to thank our amazing speakers, as I said. So we have Carol Johnson, the IT director of the Telegraph and founder of Women in Tech Club, who is going to talk to us about her learnings from failure. We also have Lawrence Moroni, back in the back. So Lawrence is the artificial intelligence advocate from Google. He's coming all the way from the US, and he's going to talk to us about failure within the AI world. So thank you both for being here today. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us. So today we are going to have the talks, then we will have a Q&A session. So I would like all of you to feel free to ask any questions that might come up for you. The night will conclude with a networking bit in the end. So please, we have an amazing group of people in the room today. So please use this opportunity, connect to each other, talk, create maybe some new friendships. So thank you all for being here today. I hope you will enjoy the event and get some great insights. And please enjoy. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Just allow me to put something here. Yes. And you mean my 2 hours presentation? No, just kidding. Let me see. Here we go. Okay, can you hear me, right? Good. It's incredible, guys. It's an incredible pleasure to have all of you here. It's a beautiful audience. That's very nice. It's nice to have these two brilliant, lively community like Women in Tech Club and Women in Tech, Not Just Code. Thank you again for joining us. Again, thank you, Lawrence, for last minute call and to make it happen. So thank you very much. My name is Ciro Rizzo. Forget it. Yeah, Ciro Rizzo. I'm the Telegraph engineer platform. Sorry, guys. I'm just to figure out how to. That's it. This is me. Yep, got it. This is me. All right, so much easier. My name is Ciro Rizzo. I'm an engineering manager for the platform team here at the Telegraph. Tonight, there is a pretty important topic. I believe that, sorry again, it's not gonna be okay. Good. This one, right? I try. All right, so big topic tonight. Failure, your success, your way to success. It's pretty hard and difficult topic, I believe so. It's a kind of topic that is related to me in a way. I can tell you very strictly, at least for part of it. Well, I can't tell you much about success, but I can tell you a lot about failures. That's a lot about it. So as an engineer, I became very familiar with the process of iteration and prototyping software. During the software development lifecycle, where iteration by iteration, you improve, learn, and correct each of these iteration. And you can call it failure, because a little failure, you improving time by time. And this intense process, what I learned is that basically requires three fundamental characteristics. One is the discipline, the other one is the analysis, to analyze well what went well and what is not, and the other point is the resiliency. Bouncing back to correct the problem is one of the most important things to do. Well, I'll try, right? 164 years old Telegraph. This is what it is, the Telegraph at the beginning of the career, right? 1855. Iteration by iteration, we change it. We change it in a way. Initially, as the first website of a UK national newspaper on internet, 1994. Iteration by iteration, here we go. We are present in multiple digital platforms, mobile, website, many social media, and this is thanks to all the micro or big, iteration that we went through our process. This is a result of course, our brilliant engineering team, great support of our partner, using an incredible mosaic of technology here. Some of the help, of course, of big name like Google, Amazon, Adobe, Elasticsearch, and just to name a few, GitHub, and so on. So forgive me if I do not, recall all the name. This is just a part of what basically we look around for our technology from the development point of view, owning and running all the entire process from the start to the end. The success of the Telegraph is not only come from iterations, right? It's coming as well from the people. And what we strongly believe in our people values, like this one. This is a part of our core value and beliefs: fearless, together, open-minded, and informed. Well, this is my perspective, at least, about failure and success. Okay, let's start, with the proper talk now. Okay, but before starting this, again, thank you very much, all of you. I have just a few housekeeping information to give you. So there is no fire drilling planned tonight. So if you hear any alarm, please don't panic. Follow the instructions, and the security guard will accompany you to the next safest exit. If you need any restroom, there are ones just at the end of this corridor. Please using all these two doors or the one on the back on the right side. Now, again, we're going to start. So I want to introduce you guys Jota Trom, an amazing leadership and career coach, entrusted by many leaders, very world largest company like Amazon, Philips, Verizon, and if I can recall, was Yahoo as well. She's as well the founder of the Women in Tech Club that make it possible tonight. And she's as well a guest lecturer at the University College of London, giving talk and delivers lectures on leadership and management to the university. In the last few months, so Jota created this group with a big success, I believe so, and you are here. Good, so thank you very much. So again, guys, welcome Jota for the next talk. Thank you very much.
Hello again. So, towards the end of 2012, I found myself in the middle of the economic crisis in Greece. The unemployment rate was 26.6%, the highest percentage we have seen in Greece until then. That is, 1 out of 4 people was unemployed, leaving more than 1 million people without a job. On top of that, I was not feeling fulfilled in my current position, earning 900 euros a month. But the current situation in Greece did not allow me many options. As for example, people had to be grateful just because they had a job. No discussion about changing a job or asking a pay rise. For many years, I had the desire to live and work abroad, but I could never find the courage to do it. The economic crisis, my low salary, the negative vibes I was absorbing in Greece led me to make a bold move. In October 2012, I quit my job and booked a one-way ticket with British Airways to London. So here I was on the 11th of November 2012 with 2 pieces of luggage without knowing what to expect. The first surprise was waiting for me when I arrived at the airport, when my lovely Greek friend John never showed up. He mixed up the dates, and not only he didn't come to pick me up, he could not offer me also a place to stay until I settled down as it was initially the plan. So I ended up in a £50 a night hotel, because that's all I could afford back then. As I was feeling a bit lonely that evening, probably the universe decided to send me some company. So the next morning, when I woke up, I found a mouse walking on my bed. I panicked, obviously. My first thought was to book a return ticket back to Greece and the comfort of my family. But that would mean that I failed, and this for me wasn't an option. Instead, I decided to not give up. Sometimes, when the right conditions for growth are not present, we need to take a huge risk and create our own opportunities. And for me, risking to stay in London at that moment was the risk that I had to take in order to create my own opportunity. So today, I want to share with you some key events of my story and 3 things that I learned over the last few years in London that I hope will act as a compass for some of you to either do things or think about things differently. So 1 week after that day of finding the mouse walking on my bed, I realized I should find another place to stay. So I started searching for a place to rent, I started searching for a job. I was very lucky, as in within a few weeks I found a room to share in an apartment, and I also started working in a startup. But this positive energy did not last for long, as 5 months after, the startup went bankrupt. I even had to spend all my savings because they couldn't even afford to pay our full salaries. I remember the last couple of weeks before starting a new job, I had to eat lentils almost every day because that's all I had. And calling my parents and asking for their help was not an option because even if it sounds silly, my pride did not allow me to do so, but also their financial situation did not allow them to do so. So as Reinhold Niebuhr once said, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And there was nothing I could do to change what had already happened. But the one thing that I could change was my mindset. And that is the first lesson I learned in London, that change starts with us. The change I had to do was to let go of my fears and find the courage to leave my country without even having a place to stay, or getting out of my comfort zone and staying in London despite the fact that things were not going as I expected. So what I learned that moment was that when challenges appear, to not give up, to not focus on the things that do not go well, but instead to persevere, to focus on what is within my control zone. And that's exactly what I did. I did not give up. About a year later, I was in a much better place. I was working in a larger company. I even had a boyfriend, Paolo, that today is my husband. And as I was searching, for better opportunities, I came across a role in Amazon. Paolo prompted me to apply for the position, but I was very hesitant. I was hesitant because, first of all, I didn't think I had all the skills they required for the job, and also I didn't believe that one of my dream companies to work at would ever consider me. But Paolo insisted again and again and again. Italians are very persistent. So I had no other choice but to apply. To my surprise, a few days after, they invited me to the first interview. Then I passed on the second stage, then I passed on the third stage, and then they invited me to the final stage that included a full day of interviews within Amazon. Despite arriving to that last stage, I still didn't believe I would get an offer. That thought, and that thought alone, helped me on the day. As I was sure I wouldn't get the role, I wasn't too much stressed about it. So instead, I decided to just enjoy the moment and do my best. So I went there, I talked with interviewers about the role, about the Amazon principles, about my experience and why I would love to work for them. That was one of the best days of my life. Probably my marriage was the second best. So that was one of the best days of my life, just because I managed to be there. Something that I couldn't even dream a year and a half ago when I was leaving Greece. And guess what? I did receive an offer that obviously I accepted. And that is the second learning I want to share with you. Do not make assumptions about what you can or cannot do. Instead, take a leap of faith and claim your dreams. Because this is something I hear over and over again during my coaching sessions. Because so many people are afraid to apply for a position because they don't think they have all the skills. Or they are afraid to ask for a promotion because they don't think they will get it. But how do you know? How do you know if you don't even try? Do not let the fear of failure to make a decision for you. Instead, take a leap of faith and claim your dreams. So the question I'm getting to is, do you have the courage to claim your dream, or you will let it slip away? Because life is not just about going to the office, waiting for the weekend, paying the rent. Each and every one of us has the right to live a life out of the dream they have inside. And it's perhaps the saddest loss to live a life without even trying to follow your dream. So what is your dream? What ignites your spark? What is the role you are afraid to apply to? What is the bold move you are afraid to make? And I strongly believe you wouldn't have this dream in your heart if you didn't already have what it takes to make it happen. As some of you may know, Amazon has 14 leadership principles. And one of these principles resonated with back then and still does. It's about having backbone, disagree, and commit. So for Amazon, leaders are obligated to respectfully challenge decisions when they disagree, even when doing so is uncomfortable or exhausting. Leaders have conviction and are tenacious. They do not compromise for the sake of social cohesion. Once a decision is determined, they commit wholly. So why am I mentioning this? 1 year after working in Amazon, I started to believe in myself, to recognize my skills. But most importantly, I started to believe that I could take ownership of my own life and pursue my dreams. Since I was 18 years old, within the first year at University of Computer Science, I realized that my true passion was helping people. But growing up in Greece, in a very traditional family where both my parents retired after working over 25 years in the same company, changing profession to become an entrepreneur who wants to help people was not a normal thing to do. So I just had to leave this dream behind. So even though excuse me, a little bit of stress. So I had to leave this dream behind. And even though even though I had this dream, as I said, I couldn't pursue. It was until I worked in Amazon, until I started gaining my own confidence, that I found the courage to actually follow this dream. Thanks to Amazon, I developed the backbone and the commitment to follow my dream, to recognize that this career path did not inspire me anymore. To have the courage to understand what success was for me. But what is success? Some people count it with years to live. Some people count it with health. Some people, they want to become millionaires. Success is something very subjective for each and everyone. For me, success was not about my bank account. It was about making an account for myself to live a sure job and carve a path of my own. Standing here in front of successful people, talking in companies like the Telegraph, is part of what success looks like for me. Delivering a speech that might resonate with you, it's an even bigger success. So once you know what is success, go for it. Commit 100%. Be determined to not give up. Will you struggle? Of course you will. There is no such thing as smooth mountain. If you want to get to the top, there will be many sharp edges that need to be stepped over. There will be moments where you will be stressed and disappointed and demotivated. But let me tell you this. Steven Spielberg was rejected from film school 3 times. 3 times, but he kept going. TV execs fired Oprah. They said she wasn't fit for TV, but she kept going. Critics told Beyoncé that she couldn't sing. She went through depression, but she kept going. Because criticism and struggle are necessary conditions for growth. And pain is part of life. But we can choose what pain, the pain on the road to success, or the pain to be haunted with regret. Having backbone, disagree, and commit. That is the third lesson that I want to share with you today, and something that I will always be grateful to Amazon for. This is what led me to live a promising career within tech and start pursuing my own dream. And after leaving Amazon, through my research, I came across coaching and positive psychology. And I just got so fascinated that I decided to go back to uni and study a postgraduate degree. That wasn't easy, of course, because for me was like going back to square two. If square one was leaving Greece without knowing what to expect, without having a place to live, square two was going back to uni to study a completely new subject in a language that's not my native, as you probably figure out by now from my very strong Greek accent, and starting a new career from zero. Today, almost 3 years after that day, I hold a postgraduate degree on coaching and positive psychology with distinction. I'm working towards publishing my thesis. I am a guest lecturer at UCL. And the most important thing, I make a living from what I love, which is helping and empowering people. And all these failures, they did not lead to be a success, because I don't feel to be a success. Instead, I feel that my journey has just started. And I don't want more failures, but I welcome failures, because every time I fail, I learn. And because I believe in life, you either win or you learn. And my experience of living in a foreign country where you're brand new, and you might feel as I was out of your water, has taught me that one of the most important things in order to succeed is your network. At least it was for me. If I didn't have amazing people to support me, I would have never done any of the things I did so far. And this is exactly what inspired me to create Women in Tech Club. Because this group is all about helping each other. It's all about creating a community that is based on human connection. Because if I have one idea and you have one idea, then each of us has one idea. But if we exchange our ideas, then we both end up having 2 ideas each. And that's the power of the group. That is the power of the network. And another thing that I realized, it is that it's not about how men or women face failure. It's about how human beings face failure. So it doesn't matter if you are a man or if you are a woman. What matters is how resilient you are as a person. So today I'm not coming here as a woman or as a man or as a professional or as an expert, because there is no expertise on failure, but there is expertise after failure. So my message today is not to women or to men, it's to human beings, because that's how I choose to see people. There are no stereotypes for me. There are no women in tech, there are no men in tech, there are just human beings in tech. As the Dalai Lama once said, when you lose, don't lose the lesson. So I want to close my talk today with the 3 lessons that I learned. Number 1, when things do not go as planned, accept the things you cannot change and find the courage to change the things that you can. Number 2, do not make assumptions about what you think you can or cannot do. Instead, take a leap of faith and claim your dreams. And number 3, challenge your decisions when they no longer resonate with your heart, and be committed to your success. I hope this journey of mine so far has motivated some of you who either feel lost, who had a friend who disappeared on you, who found a mouse walking on your bed, who are afraid to apply in your dream job. So I hope it motivated you to find the courage and the stamina and the strength to leave this room today and say, I will make it. I will make it irrespective of my failures, irrespective of my shortfalls. Because we've been given a gift that is called life. And we cannot go back and make a brand new beginning. But we can start today and make a brand new ending. Thank you very much for listening. I hope all of you will have more and more successes in the near future. And as I said earlier on, the network is the most important thing. And today I feel really, really honored because I have 2 networks to support me. I have Carol's network and Women in Tech, Not Just Code. I have Lawrence and all the AI world. And I also have the Telegraph, of course, and the engineering group. So thank you all for your support. and thanks for listening. Carol?
Thank you. I don't know how I'm going to follow that. That was very inspirational. I wish I'd met you a few years ago. Goodness me. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly do a bit of a change on the slides here and bring my deck up. And stop this one here. Bear me a second. Small technical details. Where's my mouse gone? Here we go. Oops. Here we go. Okay, nearly there. Okay, so my name's Carol Johnson and I'm the IT director at the Telegraph. I've been here about 10 years and I've had various jobs in that time. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Women in Tech, Not Just Code. I founded this earlier on in the year, so we've only been going a few months and just starting to get the network going, so thank you very much, Jota, for giving us this opportunity. Women in Tech, Not Just Code came about because I'd been to so many different events, and what I realised is that everybody talks about developers, everyone talks about coding, and everyone talks about STEM. And the thing I find is that actually technology in the tech sector is such an amazing space, and there are so many women, and men even, who can have the opportunity in that area, but we all focus on just development and coding. So not to diss anybody in the room who's of that ilk, you know, we still love you and we still want you to be part of this community. But this is really about sharing the love around women, around technology as a sector. Our mission really is to provide a place where women or young girls can belong, where we can engage with like-minded individuals and really support each other, very much like you were saying, Jutta, about supporting each other through networks, and to be able to inspire and create confidence, to believe in ourselves and to believe in each other as well. Aims are really to create a peer network, provide support for each other, role models, but actually real models. Too often we see people who we can't necessarily relate to, or there are so many big names that just keep going around the circuits and we just see the same faces and hear the same stories. And demonstrate a route into technology through the various career paths and give people identities that they can follow as well. And establish affiliates across all other networks. So, if you're working in a company that doesn't have a women's network, then, we'd happily come along and help share our thoughts with you and maybe get Women in Tech, Not Just Code going in your environment too. Values. So this one is really important for all of us who are in Women in Tech, Not Just Code. There's the reality. I don't know about you, but if you go on social media, you'll see an awful lot of things that I don't feel really relate to technology. So we're trying to give reality and perspective on some of those conversations. No man bashing, very important. Great to see so many men in the room. We really need you as our allies. You're there to help and support us, and women will have many male leaders along the way. So sharing that community, sharing the conversation, and really putting a spotlight on some of the challenges that we're all facing is really important, but it's about being inclusive as well. We're not excluding anybody, so it's great to see so many of you here. And plain speaking is a really big one for me. I so many sound bites. I've been to so many events where people say things or they all repeat the same words, and half the time I'm not too sure what they're talking about. Things like fake it till you make it. I don't know what that means. Bring your whole self. Well, I'm here, I don't really know what it means. We're trying to give some perspective of, what we think that sort of thing might mean to you or to us. And let's face it, not everybody is Michelle Obama or Sheryl Sandberg. So, we want to give you some opportunities to see people who have a different perspective. So, oh gosh, I better start using this clicker thing. The talk, We Are Born to Fail, and Why Failure is the Meaning of Life. That was the draw. That's what we were hoping to get you here to hear. But that's not the real talk. The real talk is we are born to learn, and learning is the meaning to life. And I really believe in this, and I'm hoping with some of these examples you'll see why I do that. But the first thing is, how did an introvert, yes, I am an introvert actually, how did an introvert like me end up on a stage talking to you? How did a human email who, when one of her first jobs was to be delivering messages between departments because we never had computers in those days. How did the human email become the IT director of an amazing brand, working in this fantastic office, globally recognised? I mean, talk about imposter syndrome. But one of the things for me is I never dwell on the past. And when this topic came up, I thought I really struggled to try and find a way of articulating some of this. I've always looked forward, and for me, I have a really strong mantra with hence the picture of the doors is, as one door closes, another one opens. And I find myself passing through various rooms. I see the door behind me, I see the door in front of me. Sometimes I'm in a really large room, a bit like this one, I'm having some fun and I'm enjoying it. And other times, maybe I'm forced to, but I need to go into a smaller room and I don't like it in there and I want to pass through really quickly. But one thing that I always have in the back of my mind is I proceed until apprehended. It's a mantra that someone else sort of gave me, and I really like that. I just keep finding a way of going forward. And I didn't realise that I had been on a journey going through a number of different rooms, and I hadn't realised that until I was asked the question about, you know, how do you get where you are today? So if I look back, if I kind of cast my eye over my shoulder, I realise I have been on a long journey and I have passed through so many rooms. But what I also realise is that the world has adapted and changed around me, and that can only be a good thing. And I think that's a brilliant time for women, or anybody actually in technology. There are so many opportunities for us that maybe we didn't have, certainly when I was younger. So what is failure? I mean, none of us want to see this big red stamp on anything, but what is failure? And as I said, I hadn't really thought about it. Things happen for various reasons, but is it really failure? Sometimes things happen for a reason, whether that's a decision you've made or someone has made for you. Maybe there are choices you've made. Sometimes things happen because we've procrastinated, we've maybe missed an opportunity, we've maybe been somewhat frightened, there's fear. We've made conscious or unconscious choices, whether they be positive or negative. And for me, I think one aspect that comes to mind is I've always done things with intention. I never really thought of it as an ambition. I mean, I think if you've got that, that's absolutely brilliant. But for me, I never thought about that. I just had intentions to do things and I had to find a way to do that. I actually didn't realise I could have an ambition. And I've always found a way to just do the job I'm doing, but really excel at it, do a really good job. And I think one of the challenges of being a woman in tech or working in general is I've certainly, with the women I've spoken to, is we end up doing really long hours. We put in so much extra effort. We don't always feel like we're being recognised. But I'm doing a really good job. Why isn't anybody paying attention to that? But somebody once said to me, how about doing the best to your potential? A concept I hadn't even thought of. I was good in what I was doing in this space, in this room, but actually I could be growing to my potential in the next room or the room beyond. And that was a real eye-opener for me. Before I carry on, I'm going to show you a little video. There may be some distortion on the sound, which is a bit of a shame because it was working quite well earlier. But we'll give it a go. She sounds a bit like a Dalek, sorry. So I think I've just won my £250 from Ubin Frames, thank you very much. But what did you see there? You know, what did you hear? You had mum was encouraging baby, come on, give it a go. You know, baby's there struggling, wanting to crawl, wanting to move on and getting really frustrated. You know, you could hear her growling and go, oh, I just want to do this. But there's something so magical about babies. There is something so magical about children. You know, when you watch them and develop and grow, you watch her there and she's born to fail. She is learning with every action she takes and how to improve and how she can learn from those mistakes. That's what life is about. But then something happens. She starts to walk and then she starts to grow up. and then she becomes a teenager, and we spend the rest of her life going, no, don't do that, stop what you're doing it wrong, I told you not to do that. And for some of us, that carries on through school, that carries on through work, and some of us have worked in lots of places where you're just told you're wrong all the time, and that's not a very nice place to be. So we've ended up teaching people to stop learning from their mistakes. So is it any wonder when people go to work, especially the younger generation, and we start asking them questions, what do you think, what do you feel? Like bunnies in the headlights, they can't answer. So we have to re-educate them again when they come to the workplace about what it's like. This is okay, you can fail in this environment, it's not a problem. So some examples from my story. I came from a very poor background, and so I didn't actually enjoy school. It wasn't the greatest place for me, and I was always a worrier. And I had lots of fears of failure, and I didn't want to sort of push myself too hard in case, I made a huge mistake. I didn't want to be laughed at. But I always had an ambition to learn, which is a bit of a challenge when you don't push yourself, but you want to learn. But what did drive me was my need to work. I had the intention to go out and earn money, and I would do whatever I could to earn money, but I never had any ambition about the job. And along the way, I've had various opportunities. But when I realised that the place where you could really earn your money was in London, I had to conquer my first fear: trains. I'm blooming petrified of them. Well, I was, and I learned how to get over that. But when I went for my interview and I came home and I was in floods of tears, and my boyfriend, who is now my husband, said, what's wrong? What happened? How did it go? I went, it was brilliant. I loved it. He said, why are you crying? I went, I got on a train for the first time. Ridiculous, I know, but I wonder what all the fuss was about. But that was a really big hurdle for me. And just that small thing made me think, wow, maybe I can do something here. And over the last 20 years or so, I've had lots of little failures, as we're calling them, to help shape my future, and I'll share a few of those with you now. So there was a period in my life where some of you will have heard about the dot-com bubble and lots of things happening there. It was not a very good time to be working, and I ended up working for a number of different companies who got bought by other companies, and so I ended up having quite a few redundancies in succession. Really annoying when you want to earn money. And so I thought, I'm not doing this anymore. I need to find a way of making sure I can secure my own future. So I thought, I do IT. I'm going to set myself up as an IT consultant, which is great. So set myself up. I'm my own boss now. No one can tell me what to do. This is brilliant. I'm walking into high street shops. I'm walking into high street businesses. I'm going into large offices, and I'm selling my services. That sounds terrible, but you know what I mean. And I'm getting the work, and I'm really pleased, and I'm really happy with how that's going. But I realised I hated it. I hated going in and asking people for money. I hated going in and trying to tell them, I'm really good, you really need this, I can do whatever you want. It was awful. I realised I'm a corporate girl. I like working in big organisations. I like being around lots of people, and I really enjoy part of that teamwork. So I had to get back into that kind of sector. So what I did was I used the money that I was earning to self-fund a course. But this was a time when lots of people in IT were out of work. How do I differentiate myself? And I look at HR people, they have their qualifications. If I look at finance people, they have their qualifications. Technology certificates, afraid to say, they came in abundance in those days. So I had to find a way of differentiating myself. So I did this thing called ITIL. It's not the greatest thing to be thinking about, but that was a differentiator then. And I did the course. I passed with semi-flying colours. There was two parts to it. One was brilliant, one not so, but I passed. And that opened the doors for me in so many different ways. I got lots of job offers because I was able to differentiate myself from the experience I'd had running my own business, even though I hated it, and the opportunity I took to do the training and then back into the sector. So ultimately, at the end of that was a really good success off what I felt was a failure, looking back. And another one I had was I was working for a company, and I found myself in a position where I'd been working there a few years, but I felt like I was sort of getting stuck. I wasn't really moving forward. I was missing out on opportunities, and it really started to frustrate me. Going back to this, I'm quite a quiet person, and I'm not going to shout about who I am, just look at the results. And my boss and I had a conversation. He said, I'm going to get you a coach. I wish I'd known you then. I'm going to get you a coach. And I thought, this is brilliant. This is exactly what I need. He's going to help me understand a little bit about what I need to do to maybe move things forward. And when I arrived, the coach asked me why I thought I was there. So I explained. And she said, oh, well, that's interesting. She said, because your boss thinks you're here for a different reason. I thought, that's interesting as well. And it was because he couldn't understand how I was able to get things done when he spent his whole life running around the office, cajoling people. He was a bit of an extrovert, you know. He'd be making all this song and dance to get things done, but I would be able to sit at my desk and quietly get the work done and have the same kind of results. So he really didn't understand me, and he wanted me to change who I was to be like him. Well, that wasn't going to happen. But the coaching was brilliant. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about recognizing how other people behave, and I used that to my advantage. And what I came to realize is that actually, we had a parent-child relationship. He treated me like his child, and I allowed him, and I treated him like my parent. I didn't stay there too long, and I quickly moved on. But that was great because I got to learn about other people. And it's something that I've carried with me. I really find it interesting to understand who people are, what they're about, and how you can really bring that to your advantage in the workplace, especially when you're trying to build cultures and build teams. And then my final story that I'll share with you is a colleague of mine, my boss at the time. Some people in the room will know who I'm talking about when I start to describe him. An American guy, rather loud, rather brash, very bold. And he would always have people eating out of the palm of his hands. Didn't matter what he was talking about. Literally, people were drooling. And then I realised one day he was telling them stories about some of the things that I had done. And I thought, I mean, this is great. He's telling everybody what we're doing. But I thought, how is it that he can do that and I can't? You know, I'd come out with the most mundane, boring sentence about what I'd been doing, and he came out and it was like, "Rah!" Everyone's like, "Yay!" So I thought, okay, so we had to have a conversation, and he taught me the value of telling stories. He taught me the value of trying to find a way of describing what you do to sell yourself. I couldn't do it when I was walking the high streets. That sounds terrible as well, but. The importance of trying to explain who you are and what you do without having to make it so sort of clinical and really express what it's about was really valuable to me. And so, I mean, it's really hard when you first start because you sound like a bit of a fraud trying to sort of come up to people and sort of whiz along this story. It doesn't, you think, oh gosh, I just sound like an absolute fraud. But over a period of time, he'd coach me, and at that time I was working on a project. We brought our service desk back in-house, and it was a really successful piece of work. And the partner we were working with at the time said, you know, it was such a great story, would you like to do a case study for us? And I said, yes, I'd love to. And then when they brought the video crew in, I said, why am I doing this? This is like my idea of hell. But it's okay because they cut videos and make it really easy for you. And then they say, would you like to talk about it at one of the service management shows? And I did it again. I said, yes, of course I would. But when I got there and I realised I'm in front of an audience about the size that you are, and I'm holding on for dear life onto the podium as my knees are bouncing and I can barely speak, I did think, I have absolutely gone mad now. Why on earth am I doing it? But it was the best thing ever, because I realised I could do something that I never thought I could do. I pushed myself to do it. But it also gave me the opportunity to really not just talk about me, but to talk about the team, to talk about the company, and to talk about all the amazing and wonderful things we do. And that's a story worth sharing. When I look back, in fact, the thing I love about working today, everywhere you go, people talk about fast fail, fail forward. Yeah, it's a common phrase we hear. When I look back, I realise my whole life has been about fail fast and fail forward. So for me, living in this moment with that kind of phrase is brilliant, because it doesn't feel like failure, because it's absolutely fine to be able to do that. So as you see from this wonderful quote from J.K. Rowling, she did an inaugural speech, and there is a subtext to this which I won't spoil, but if you ever see it, it's worth looking at. It is impossible to live life without failing. So a number of things that I've learned. I didn't ask enough questions because I didn't want to look stupid, because I wasn't sure I was asking the right questions, and I didn't really want to be noticed. My intention was to be the best I could be at what I was doing, but I hadn't realised I could be the best of my potential. And along the way, I had lost my voice. I hadn't been listened to. I didn't meet people's expectations, and times were very different then. But I learned to listen a lot. I don't consider these as failures, and I don't look back on any of this with regret. So let's go back to our childhood. Do you remember having puzzle books as a child? Yeah? When you had to find your way to the middle of the maze, yeah? Or there were 3 routes and you had to pick one, yeah? Have you been to a maze? Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? Slightly frustrating, but it's fun. And to me, what's great is as you're bouncing around trying to find your way out or way in, you know, if you find you get to a dead end, you turn around, you come back. But it's a bit of fun. There's no dramas, there's a sense of achievement. And that is what life is about. Life is a maze. Life is amazing. I'm not going to whiz through all of this, but there's a link at the top here. There's a blog on how to be resilient. And so some of the tips here, you'll be able to find in a little bit more detail. I'm just conscious of time. But certainly these things, I think, help. Understanding yourself and understanding others. Find a mentor, find someone who understands you that you can really bounce your ideas off of. Talk to friends, phone friends, ask the audience. You know, just because someone doesn't understand the job you're doing, a little dose of common sense and reality is always good. If you're a people pleaser, stop being a people pleaser. Build that resilience and change your habit. If you have emotional habits that stop you from moving forward, find a way to break them. And a nice little quote from Mariana. We need to accept that we won't make the right decisions, that we'll screw up royally sometimes, understanding that failure is not the opposite of success, it's part of success. And as my American friend said, if something goes wrong, don't worry, no puppies died. So, thank you very much. Please follow us on the social channels. We would love to hear from you. We would love to get the conversation going. And if you are a BA or you're in delivery or product management or product, watch this space because there's something going to be coming in the new year. If you want to DM me, you can. That'll be great. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carol. Very inspiring, you know, talk and incredible. Do you need to connect the? So, yes. Yes. Just.
Can you hear me? Hello. There we go. Okay, cool. Oh, projector. We got no projector. Let's see. Let's try this. Can you see? Yay, there we go. Alrighty. Let me get rid of the keyboard setup assistant. Sometimes Max thinks projectors are keyboards. I have no idea why. So, come back. Okay. I said something bad about a Mac and it started a... Stay? Okay. Let me get rid of the keyboard setup assistant. I can just hide it in the corner. Okay, so this is one of my favorite quotes. And let me try plugging into my dongle. Is that okay? Yeah. All right. Remove that one, plug this one in, and see if we have any luck. These Apple dongles are really expensive, so they're supposed to work. Yes, okay, good. So this is one of my favorite quotes, and I learned this quote when I was about 8 years old, and it begins, "In a good cause, there are no failures." Does anybody know how it ends? Whoops. That was a failure. In a good cause, there are no failures, only delayed successes. And this is like, I learned this when I was maybe 8 or 9 years old. Anybody know who said this? Yeah, my new best friend if you do. It's from Isaac Asimov, who was a science fiction writer. And this was a quote from one of the characters in one of his stories. And, you know, this became in many ways the theme of my life, which was really good because I've had a lot of failures in life. But I learned from this to really see failures as setbacks and as delayed successes. And tonight what I want to do is talk about 3 that I've encountered working in tech, and working particularly with women in tech, and some of the failures around the industry to be able to serve women in tech. But before I do that, I work in AI. So some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about tonight is AI related. So I'm going to do a quick 2-minute crash course into machine learning for people who aren't familiar with machine learning. So how many programmers in the room? Okay. How many non-programmers in the room? Oh, nice. So I picked the right slides. Okay. So imagine if you are a programmer and you have to write an application for activity detection. I'm supposed to animate this slide, but it's not animated. Delayed success, not a failure. So imagine if, for example, how many people are wearing an Apple Watch or a Google Watch or something like that? Right? How many of you use that for activity detection, like if you're walking or running? Right, most of you. That's why you buy them. Now think about what it would be like to program one of those. You might be able to, for example, take a look at the speed that the person is moving at. And in this case, you say, hey, if their speed is less than 4, they're 4 miles an hour, they're probably walking. And then you could say, okay, let's detect if they're running. If their speed is less than 4, they're probably walking. Otherwise, they're probably running. Then you need to add biking to that. And you go, well, if their speed's less than 4 miles an hour, they're probably walking. If it's less than 12 miles an hour, they're probably running. Otherwise, they're biking. And then your boss who loves golf asks you to build golf into this thing. And you go, oh, crap. How can I write code for that? How can I, for some people, I'm sure Chiro, when he hits a golf ball, it goes about 200 yards. And me, when I hit a golf ball, I walk like this far and then hit another one and walk this far. And that's not even playing mini golf. That's with the real golf clubs. And so it's like everybody's different. And as a result, trying to write code for this is very, very difficult to do and almost impossible. So the idea behind machine learning is to be able to solve problems like that by taking what we do in traditional programming and flipping it around a little bit. So traditional programming, the top part of this slide, is that those of us who are coders, we can abstract everything we do into that top box. And that is, we create rules. We write rules in a programming language, whatever that language is, Python, Java, C#, whatever. Those rules act on data and they give us answers. So for example, if speed is less than 4, they're probably walking. The rules are if speed is less than 4, the data is 4, and then the answer coming in that is they're probably walking. The whole revolution about machine learning and all of the hype around machine learning is just flipping the axes on this diagram to get what's at the bottom. I'm sorry for the folks at the back if it's hard to see. But the idea is that instead of us expressing rules in a programming language, we know the answers and we have data and we get a machine to infer what those rules are and tell us what those rules are. So now, instead of solving a problem like activity detection, like we did earlier on by trying to figure out the rules, we put a device on people and we measure the data that they have when they label it as walking. Like those of you who have an Apple Watch and you go for a run, what's the first thing you do? You go, I'm running, right? So what you're doing is you're labeling that data and sending that data back to Apple, or if you're using one of our watches, you're doing the same thing. By the way, I'm from Google. Sorry, I forgot to introduce myself from that. So as a result, gather lots and lots of data that's labeled as walking, gather lots and lots of data labeled as running, lots of data labeled as biking, and lots labeled as golfing, or sort of golfing in my case. So now what happens is, instead of us trying to figure out the rules about what makes walking or running or biking, what a computer can do is start matching patterns in that data that a human may not see. And that effectively is what machine learning is all about. And that's a way that we can open up new ways to build applications that weren't previously possible. It's no coincidence that great devices like the Apple Watch are now available with the machine learning revolution going on around us. And it's only just beginning. So that's a quick brief into machine learning and AI and how it all works, because I wanted to give that brief because that's important for the next 3 stories that I want to tell that are about failure. But before I tell those stories, I want to do a little social experiment with you. Okay, that's my summary, answers and data in, rules out. I want to do a little social experiment with you, okay? So I was talking about you now can create systems by giving them data. So I want you to give me some data. And I'm going to say a word. And I want you to think, most times I'll say this word and an image is going to flash in your mind and describe what that image is, okay? Are you ready? The word is wedding. Okay, I hear white, I hear flowers. What's that? Rain? Oh, ring. I'd never heard rain before. Okay, ring, good. Cake, a dress. Cake, okay. All right, so you probably all have that kind of image in your mind, like bride in a white dress, maybe a groom in a tuxedo, flowers, cake, not rain, but ring. It actually rained at my wedding, so that's why it was a moment. So anybody have any different images to that, out of curiosity? Okay.
Well, I remember the Belen Generis the other day, and she was talking about her wedding to her spouse.
Okay.
Ellen, what was she married Portia?
Yep.
So yeah, that's a different whole thing. Not the groom and bride, but the bride and bride. Or the groom
Right,
and
so you had an image of a same-sex wedding because you saw the thing about Ellen DeGeneres, and that's a very rare response. Most of the time I'll say wedding, the first response is man, woman, man in tuxedo, bride in dress, right? So think about if we, in this room, were to try to teach an AI what a wedding is, okay? If you hadn't said that, everybody would have taught the AI that a wedding is a man and a woman, and it's a man in a tuxedo and a woman in a white dress, and that kind of thing. And this is a problem when feeding data into AIs to train them, and the problem is called bias. That if not enough people with not enough viewpoints are feeding data into the computers, and if you remember my previous diagram, it's about answers and data, and then the computer will infer the rules. So if an alien landed and came on stage to talk to us today, and we were trying to say this is what a wedding is, and we said ring and flowers and cake and that kind of stuff, it wouldn't understand the entirety of a wedding, right? So this is where the first set of mistakes can happen. And let me show you a picture that's a little bit of a shocking picture, but these are results of a fully trained AI. Are you ready? Okay. So take a look at these 4 pictures and take a look at how an AI interpreted them. And this is a common open source image recognition algorithm. The one on the left is a Jewish wedding, and the man's wearing white instead of a black tuxedo. The woman's in a white dress, but it actually still recognized it as a wedding. The one in the middle here, this beautiful lady in the dress, you know, obviously it's the classic bride in a white dress, and it recognizes bride ceremony, and it still recognizes a wedding. The cliched one that most of us came up with, man in a tuxedo, woman in a white dress, flowers, that kind of thing, it recognizes a wedding. But look at the picture on the right. This is a wedding. But all of the people who trained this AI never considered multicultural weddings like this, and I'm not sure what country it's from. It's from an African country. But then what did it come up with? Person and people was all the AI could actually recognize this as. What you think about it, it's kind of highly offensive, and it marginalized people. My wife is from Hong Kong, and so we got married here in London, and then we also went to Hong Kong and got married. And if you know a wedding banquet in Hong Kong, the bride wears a red dress. And when a person first did this experiment on me, I never even considered a bride in a red dress, even though my own wife wore a red dress. You know, I think she's watching the live stream, so I'm probably in trouble now. So here's like the first mistake. So traditional computing tends to be relatively few people writing code. And then that code gets compiled, and then that code is used to build systems. With machine learning and AI, it's relatively few people gathering data and training an AI with that data. What happens when you have relatively few people gathering that data? Mistakes like this one. Okay, to me, this is not a failure, this is a delayed success. The optimist in me realizes that seeing something like this, it makes it much easier to debug because you can see the problem. Right? If this was a problem in thousands of lines of code and it was something buried deep in code that introduced a bias, it's much harder to spot that. But in this case, like I said, the optimist in me says, this failure can be a delayed success. We can change our models, we can relabel them, we can retrain. This is a relatively trivial example with a wedding. We've probably all seen on the news other examples of where AIs classified something much more offensively than this, but this is how it happens. So that's the first story, and it's the first story of failure. And to me, like I said, bias in AI is a massive problem, but it's an easily fixable problem. And one of the ways that we fix that problem is by having multiple viewpoints on the data. Multiple age, multiple races, multiple national origin, multiple sexual orientation. Thank you for bringing up the same-sex wedding. You're the only person who's ever done it. And I've done this speech about 10 times, you know, which is really incredible. And so, you know, as a society, we're changing, and hopefully as a society, as we have more people involved, and we're open and encouraging for more people to get involved, then situations like this wouldn't happen. So that's failure number one and the learning from that and the delayed success that comes from it. Okay, failure number two. If you remember back to this slide, I deliberately showed a woman in the emoji in this slide. And there's a story behind this. And this story comes from a friend of mine that I'm lucky enough and I'm fortunate enough to spend a lot of time in Japan. I do some teaching in universities in Japan. And a couple of years ago, I got into running because this friend of mine was a very ardent runner. And she was like telling me off that I got to visit Japan a lot and all I did was see the office and see restaurants. And it's like there was all these beautiful places to go running. So she would like text me and say, go running in these places and this kind of thing. And I hope this doesn't sound sexist, but being a woman, I always find that she communicates much more in emojis, you know. And she sent me a message like this one, and it was like, hey Lawrence, do you want to go running at the Imperial Palace, the Emperor's Palace? Foreigners call it the Imperial Palace, locals call it the Emperor's Palace, I don't know why. So she sent a text, something like this, do you want to run at the Emperor's Palace tomorrow morning? And oh sorry, one little background to this story is that she works for a competitor of Google, and we have a little joke that's going on between us, was that she will send me an IM using their IM platform, I will send back IMs using our IM platform to see who can convert the other to the other person's IM platform first. But she'd sent this thing to me, and this is maybe 4 years ago. And I wanted to send something back with an emoji of a woman running and a man running. And oh, by the way, this is more like what it's like when we're running that she's... you know. And I don't know if I think it's a part of the story that I'll get to a little bit later, but I don't think it's a coincidence that the fact that the man is kind of upright and not running very hard, whereas the woman is really going for it. And these are the emojis in Android 10, by the way. So I was trying from my keyboard to send a message back to her with emojis for running. Now, nowadays, most of the time we'll do our messaging on a phone, and when you want to send an emoji, there's a menu and you pick it from a menu. But back then, if you're doing it from a laptop or something like that, if you wanted an emoji, you didn't really do a menu. You had shortcodes for doing the emoji. And the shortcode for running looked like this. So I would like send something back, and it's like, okay, let's go running, and I'll type bracket, running, close bracket. What did I get? A man running. Do you know how to get a woman running with a shortcode emoji? Anybody in the audience know how to do it? That's telling enough, right? Okay? This is how, it took me hours to figure it out, and this is how I ended up figuring out. Are you ready? I had to type this. So it was the running plus the Venus symbol. So now the next question is, does anybody know how to type the Venus symbol on a keyboard? All right. Anybody? Yeah. When I was creating these slides a couple of weeks ago, I had to install a whole new keyboard driver on my Mac just to be able to get that, to put it in the slide. You know, thankfully, we're not in that state anymore. But this is what I had to type on this instant messaging platform to get a woman running. And how you get the Venus symbol is there's a Unicode for the Venus symbol. And in Windows, if you hold down the Alt key and type the 4-digit Unicode, Windows will give you the Venus symbol. I can't remember what the 4-digit Unicode for that is. Unfortunately, it's even more difficult nowadays. Like I said, I had to install an extra soft keyboard on my Mac just to be able to get it. So, can anybody see what's wrong with this? Right? It's wrong on a whole number of layers. Okay. First of all, the default state for running is a man. Okay, that's the easy and obvious and still terrible one. The second one is that if you want to get a woman running and to have equality, even in something like an emoji, you have to go through all this extra work in order to do that. And then the third one is that this extra work is like really, really difficult. You know, when I shared this with my friend, she actually joked and she laughed about it and she was saying, yeah, well, the woman is an enhanced version of the man, so it's okay to have the enhancement. But she was just trying to help me save face. And it was a really difficult problem. Now, why do you think this would arise? Those of us who are coders, why do you think something like this would happen? That we default to a man. Okay? White male coders, most likely, okay? So I started digging into the source code of this, and one of the great things about working at a big tech company is you can look at a lot of source code. And I started digging into the source code of this, and I saw source code that looked a little bit like this, where it's a case of, you know, if the input text that a person type and you convert it to lower string, and if it contains running, then you add the running emoji. And that's what the source code had originally looked like. And the reason why it looked like that was that if you go way back, you know, to the original emojis, it was like a little stick figure. And a little stick figure running was genderless. It was just a stick figure running. So you could write code that says, okay, you know, if somebody types a short code, let's make it running. But then displays got more advanced, graphics got more advanced, and then that stick figure became a cartoon figure that really looks like a man. And then someday somebody said, wait a minute, we can't just have a male emoji, we have to have female emojis too. So how would we incorporate the female emoji? Well, you would think you would write code like this, right? Where it says, okay, let's make something that says like man running. And if it's a man running, we'll put the emoji male. And if it's woman running, we'll put the emoji female. What's wrong with this code? Those of us who are coders. Getting rid of the top code and bringing in the bottom code. Yeah, it's not backwards compatible, right? You end up with a regression problem. And as a result now, if like as an industry we brought out something like this, then everybody who had been used to using running, their experience would break. So you couldn't just have a man running and a woman running. You would have to still have running. So they ended up compromising and writing code like this one, where it says, okay, we'll still have running. Let's have some enhanced condition for running. And it's like, if it contains the Venus symbol, we'll have running emoji female. Otherwise, we'll have running emoji male. And the reason why this code then ended up succeeding was it didn't break the regression, you still had running, and whoever was testing this never really considered that it's slightly offensive to make it much more difficult to type a female running emoji, and we ended up with code like this. The fortunate thing is, as an industry, that we've had a delayed success with this, not because we fixed the code. This broken code is still everywhere. But not because we fixed the code, but because we've changed the user interface that we're using. Primarily now we use, how many of you have ever typed a short code on your phone? You'll hold down the emoji, you'll pick the emoji, and you'll send it, and you're not thinking about a short code. But this broken code is still in lots and lots of places. And see if you can find some. They're not in Google's code anymore, but they are in some other code. And so it's like, this is the second failure. That, starting from a simple condition where it was just a stick figure for running, nobody ever considered gender when it was just a stick figure, but then as things evolved and we had more advanced graphics and we had we had an emoji that looks obviously like a male and then added emojis that looked obviously like a female, nobody thought of this and nobody thought of the difficulties that would come out of that. So while this failure became a delayed success, it's kind of a lucky win just because the user interface has changed. Okay, so those are two of the stories. And now the third one I have to share is the most difficult, because this is a current and ongoing failure. And it's one of the things that I'm working on personally to try and fix. But it's going to be a long road. And that's why I'm really thrilled to be here tonight. And there's so many women in tech here tonight and so many men in tech who have come to a Women in Tech event. That apply your brains to this problem, because I think this is a problem that we all need to work on to be able to solve. I go back to the beginning when I spoke about the wedding and I spoke about AI and I spoke about the bias that was in that. And because originally we didn't have that diversity of viewpoint with the training data. So this number, 28%. 28%, according to US statistics, are the number of females in undergraduate degrees in computer science. It's a pretty good number. It's not great, but it's not bad. Okay, and it's growing, which is also good. This number, between 25 and 28%, is from, I think it's the National Software Foundation in the US, are the number of women in STEM careers somehow associated with computer science. Now, initially, you might think, this is great. If there are 28% in undergraduate degrees and 25 to 28% actually working, then it's a case of, as we increase the pipeline by having more women in undergraduate degrees, we'll also have more women in the workplace. And a lot of people go, problem solved. It's a beautiful thing. Anybody see the problem in that? Okay, the clear-cut problem is very, very subtle, and it's something that I want to go into in the next few slides, and this is the most difficult part. That is, how do you measure these people? How do you measure that there are 25 to 28%? Considering also that there are market forces driving companies to report that more women are working in STEM, right? So I'm trying to dig into these figures to see exactly how many women are working, particularly in software engineering, and are engaged in it. I want to share some of my results with you tonight. And these results are a little bit disheartening, and they're a little bit saddening. And I do want to kind of share this not as a criticism of women, but this is our industry and what our industry is doing to fail women. And how can we succeed, and how can we make our software industry better for women? And our viewpoint and the philosophy that my division and Google are working on is, if we make it better for women, we'll make it better for everybody. And the same logic will apply if we make it better for different races, different ages, different viewpoints, as well as different genders. But the focus that I've been doing is on gender. So my next number I'm going to share is 10%. So what I did was I work on an open source product called TensorFlow. And TensorFlow, as I've mentioned, is open source. And being open source, it's on GitHub. And a lot of the feedback that I get that is very difficult for women in tech, particularly in software engineering, is that the work environment can be very hostile towards women. Out of interest, how many of you have felt that? Yeah, a lot of hands. I usually get a lot of hands when I do that. So what I wanted to do was, can I find a statistic that is largely anonymous, that has nothing to do with the workplace, that would give me a strong signal for women's involvement in tech? And with an open source project on GitHub, you can do something called starring it. By starring it, that just means that you like it. It's like hitting like in Facebook. And so it's an anonymous thing. So we have about 150,000 stars on TensorFlow. And I did a little bit of scripting, hocus pocus, where there's an API on GitHub called Stargazers, where you can pull the IDs of everybody who has starred something. And then one by one, I went through these IDs to get their name and their location. And then for these 150,000 had a name and location, Google has a geolocation API that I could use to filter out weird locations, because somebody could say they're Bob from Mars and stuff like that, to find real names and real locations. And then there are third-party services that offer gender inference if you give a first name and a location. So for example, if it's Tracy from London, it's like 99% that it's female. But if it's Tracy from Toronto, Canada, it's like 70% chance that it's female. So it's a really cool service. So I went through all of the names and locations, and I picked all of those that had greater than 67% probability of that gender. And it ended up filtering my 150,000 down to about 60,000. And of those 60,000, 10% were female. So this is the first problem that we're looking at trying to address. Why, if 25 to 28% of software engineers are female, are only 10% of them starring it on GitHub? We don't know. And it's one of the things we really want to look into. And it's one of the things I'm imploring and really asking everybody here, if you have feedback and if you've got data that you could share that will help us to fix this, I'd really love it. The second number I'm going to share is 5%. So one of the things that I do is I teach online courses. So I have an online course on Coursera in machine learning and TensorFlow. And between all the different courses that I teach directly, I have about 140 to 150,000 students. And then there's code that I wrote and syllabus that I wrote for other MOOCs that have about the same number between them. So I'm combining about 300,000 students from all of these MOOCs. And the data that I gathered about female students on these courses is that it's 5%. Part of this is largely because these courses are international, and there are some countries where women participation in software is much lower than it is in the UK and the US. But still, the 5% number was really disappointing. Again, I'm not criticizing women. It's more a case of what is wrong with our industry that's leading this low level of participation. A lot of the times what we found is that, unfortunately, women tend to hit a glass ceiling very early in their career. And if they want to spend some time and some money and some corporate money to go and do a training, they're hearing, no, you can't do that. And so this is one of the reasons I'm seeing why it's this low, but we're still trying to research why it's this low. So then the next number, this to me is the saddest one of all, is I run the YouTube channel for Google AI. And as part of running the YouTube channel, I get access to all of the statistics and all of the data of people watching our videos. And in many cases for our videos, it's less than 1% of the viewership is female. So this to me, again, in particular for YouTube, is telling me that we're doing a really, really bad job with YouTube and with our content on YouTube of reaching female developers. Because this number, it's almost a statistical error. It's that low. So the questions then come, and common wisdom comes, like, how do you fix this? And the first thing, like when we talk a lot, for example, with women's groups, is that more representation, more diversity on the channel. So one of the things that we've been doing on our channel is we try to keep it at a minimum 1/3 of the presenters are women, at a minimum. And so, for example, this is Carmel Allison. She's an engineering manager on our team, an absolutely brilliant and engaging speaker. And this is the second most popular video on our channel with a woman presenting. And one of the things that it goes against common knowledge that you would think that a female presenter would actually attract more female views. But the truth has been, it's the other way around. This video with Carmel is our second most popular video on YouTube, and it's got less than 1% female viewership. And this video also by Carmel, has got less than 1/10 of the female viewership of that previous one. So it's really just a blip. So again, in a good cause, there are no failures, only delayed successes. We're trying to figure out how do we turn this into a delayed success, and we really need your help. We really love your feedback as good, strong women in tech, as good, strong men who are willing to come to a Women in Tech event to try and figure out why is this happening. One of the things that we've been doing, and a couple of the signals that we found that have worked, is a lot of it is the subject matter. So this video, Machine Learning Fairness, is our highest watched video by percentage amongst women, and it has about 10% viewership by women on our YouTube channel. It's an absolutely brilliant video. If you get a chance, go check it out. That slide that I showed earlier on of the wedding came from this talk at Google I/O, and these are two really strong women who really have deeply researched machine learning fairness, and they talk about that as well as some of the tools from Google to enable machine learning fairness. So another piece of common wisdom, the first one was diversity of presenters, and so we've tried to fix that. The good news is the overall channel's female viewership since we started adding more female presenters has tripled. It's still a very low number, but it has tripled. So that was the first step in fixing it, but it's not enough. We really need to go further. So right now I'm aiming at, earlier I said 10% of women have starred TensorFlow on GitHub. If we can get our channel to 10% viewership, that's our first milestone. And anything you can do, any feedback that you can give me to help with that, I'd really appreciate. Then the second piece of common wisdom, and it's a lot of anecdotal evidence that I heard, and almost every time I speak with women in tech about this, I'll get this feedback, was along the lines of outside of the office, women tend to be more likely to not do work-related things. The burden of cooking and looking after children tends to fall on women, even though you have a full day job. And almost everybody I've spoken to has said that feedback to me, and it's the truth. But then when I start looking at the numbers, I want to show these two charts. So these two charts are volume of traffic by day. And so the bottom one in particular, if you take a look at it, there are 5 peaks, followed by 2 smaller peaks. So you can guess which days are Monday through Friday, and you can guess which days are Saturday and Sunday, and you can guess when is office time and when is non-office time. So what I did was I started analyzing this data by cutting these peaks and saying, if that were true universally, and we have 25% female developers, and they only did time in the office, then accessing machine learning content, accessing developer content, then if 25% of these peaks were female and the rest were male, so almost everything out of the office and on weekend were male, it would lead to about 15% of volume of viewership would be female. And unfortunately, that's not the case. So the anecdotal evidence, and all of my experience with the anecdotal evidence points it to be true. But when I start looking at the mass evidence, when I start looking at millions of people instead of the few dozen that I can speak to, we're beginning to see that that's not the case. So there's a problem here. And to me, a problem is also an opportunity. There is an opportunity for us to turn this failure into a delayed success. I think there's a lot of things that we can all do. Meetups like this one are a massive, massive start to that. As Yoda was mentioning earlier on, like being able to network with each other, being able to learn from each other, being able to encourage each other is a huge thing. For the men in the audience and for the men watching, it's to be brothers to the women around you. I honestly don't like the word ally, because allies seem to be different people in a war against a common enemy. I think we should be brothers and sisters. So forgive me if a lot of you I know use the word ally, but I prefer not to use it. I think we should be shoulder to shoulder with each other to make a better working environment and turn this current failure into a delayed success. So with that in mind, I know it's a little bit of a downer at the end, but I think it was something that was very important that I wanted to share with you. And I want to go back to that original quote. In a good cause, there are no failures, only delayed successes. One of the corollaries of that was that once you have a success, you know it's a good cause, right? And so I'm fully confident and fully optimistic that we as an industry can turn this into a success. We're working really, really hard on doing it. We're not there yet, and we just hope that you can give us feedback. This is my email address, lmaroney@google.com, or on Twitter, I'm @lmaroney. Feel free to give me any feedback, any suggestions. If you don't like what I said, I'm really sorry. I know somebody said in one of the earlier talks to be bold and sometimes don't be a people pleaser. And I think this topic is so important that we can't be people pleasers, that sometimes we do have to crack some eggs if we want to make an omelette. And as an industry, sometimes I think we've kind of leaned towards going, you know, let's pad these statistics, let's put people who are non-technical into the bucket and say, yay, look at us, we got diversity, we got 25% female viewership. But when we start looking at then the deep stats of those who are software developers engaging with software developer content, we're not there yet. We want to get there, we're working hard to get there, so please help us. And with that, I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Lots of very interesting number. I guess there is a lot to fix here,
Yes.
yeah, and to learn. So again, thank you very much, everybody. We may have a short Q&A session if you want. If there is anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. I might invite Jota and Carol as well here on the stage. Any question? Yeah, good. I got one there.
I was just curious, what do those numbers look like over time? Is it pretty static, or does it go up or down?
So I'll go through each of the numbers. So I started really looking into this deeply about 8 months ago. So it hasn't been a long time. It actually came as a side project where, if you've ever gone to any of the Google TensorFlow projects, keynotes, we have this map where we show everybody in the world who started TensorFlow. I created that map, and it was as an offshoot of that I realized I could do the gender thing, and then it's when I saw that the numbers were so bad. So I've been tracking them for about 8 months. The numbers of stars on TensorFlow has stayed pretty static, around 10%. The numbers of people going to the MOOCs has stayed static, around 5%. But as a result of seeing those numbers, we started making some changes on YouTube, and that's where the numbers have tripled of the overall viewership on YouTube. Relative percentage of women in those 8 months have tripled. They're still way too low. It's easy to triple a small number, right? But that's the trend that we're seeing. So we're doing something that works, but I'm scared that we're not doing enough, because triple a small number in 8 months is still a very small number. We have a number of programs that we're running. I'm starting a Women in Data Science Study Jam series. It's starting in Seattle. We're hoping to spread it around the whole of the US. We're actually starting it next Monday in Seattle, with the idea of being like getting more women in data science to study content together, to study the same content together, to encourage other women, and see if that funnels an uptick in that content. So hopefully, if I come back and do this in 12 months, that tripled number will have tripled again, but I really don't know. So, but great question, thank you.
Lawrence as well. You were talking about 25% of women, of software developers in America are women. Well, and obviously that's sort of self-reported number. But working at Google, you must have some visibility of what it's like at Google. And I'm sure Google does a lot to try and attract more women. But what do you feel their number is? And do you think they're doing more or less than the average?
There's an official number that we state. I can't remember what it is. But I'll give my own impression from just eyeballing it, like walking around the office, that kind of thing. It's actually probably greater than 25%. Particularly in the AI field. So I work from home in a home office by myself, so it's 0% female in my particular office. But like when I visit our headquarters and where the AI research is going on, I actually noticed a lot of women there, probably more like 40%, and a lot of women of color as well, which was really encouraging. We have been very aggressive about trying to encourage women to apply, and to try and coach women through the application process to avoid imposter syndrome and stuff like that. And I think that's bearing fruit. I don't know what the overall percentage is for the company. It has been published publicly. I think it's in the 25-28% range. But in the AI field, and our group is called RMI, Research into Machine Intelligence, I do see a larger number there.
Okay, time for one more question.
Hi, this is for any of you to answer. I've actually transitioned into working in tech quite recently, and I did that through a Women into Tech course. And now that I'm now working as a software developer, I was really surprised that talking to some of the men, especially the really young comsci guys that I'm training with, there was this, there's a general belief that unconscious bias, against women doesn't exist. And that positive discrimination, such as what I guess helped me get into the industry, is unfair. And sometimes companies are trying to promote women just because they're women. And I really don't know how to handle that. I was really surprised to see that. Like, I thought it would be a kind of, everybody knows this unconscious bias in certain minorities and genders are going to feel that. But I honestly don't know how to deal with this in the workplace, and if we don't all think it's a problem, how are we going to deal with it?
There is something quite interesting about this, and I hear it a lot, and lots of conversations. Positive discrimination is what people would describe it as, but what they forget is what we're trying to do is attract more people from the pool, okay? I can put you on a starting line, but you have to run that race, and I think that's the difference. We are not picking you because you happen to be a woman. Right? You have won that race because you've proven yourself to be the fastest, the best, the fittest, whatever, and you've beaten all the other competition, but I got you to the starting line. And in many cases, women do not get to the starting line, and it is imperative that we really help people understand that. It is not about saying you are selected to take that job, you are selected to start that race.
Can I also just add? I've seen exactly the same thing as you mentioned. I said I run the YouTube channel, so I moderate all the comments. And every time there's a female presenter, there's almost always, and particularly a female presenter of color, there's almost always somebody like talks diversity hire or other such nonsense, which is ridiculous. So part of our policy is that we do not do diversity hires. We do not do positive discrimination or anything like that. But one of the things that we do try to do, and we do try to recognize, is that it is harder for women. It is harder, if nothing else, because I think you mentioned imposter syndrome, right, when you're interviewing for Amazon. And everybody gets imposter syndrome, but because of feedback like you've heard, we see that women suffer much more from imposter syndrome. So we do things like to help coach women who are applying for the job to get them over that barrier of the extra imposter syndrome. And some people then misinterpret that as, oh, they're doing extra stuff, which is just complete nonsense. The only thing that I can say is that I can hope that over time, as people see more and more strong women standing up, representing, and being there as part of the community alongside the men, as opposed to siloed individual communities of women, which is why I love what we're doing here tonight, that impression will just get washed through the pipes. The optimist in me hopes for that. The ally in me is working for that.
No, we're with you, brother.
And I think unfortunately, it's going to take time to change perceptions. And I know we're running short on time, but if I can change one story, you've probably detected an accent from me. Anybody know where I'm from? Ireland, okay. And I moved from Ireland to London. I graduated in 1991, way back. And I lived in London and worked in London as a software engineer, like in 92, 93, 94. And if you remember during those times, if you're Irish, the amount of bias against Irish people, we were drunks, we were stupid, we were low IQ, all these jokes that comedians, do you hear about the Irishmen, all that kind of stuff? So there was an incredible amount of bias against Irish people. And I was a software engineer, and I thought I was a pretty good software engineer, but I had all of this unconscious bias against me. A lot of times I'd do a good job, and like the best that I would say is like, oh, that's not bad for an Irish person, And in some ways I see the same thing happening with women. But I tell that story now, 20 years later, and we're laughing because it's so ridiculous. And I hope that 20 years from now, or less than 20 years from now, people will be on a stage saying, as a woman, I faced unconscious bias. People would say, not bad for a woman, and the audience will laugh because it's something that's so ridiculous. So.
One last thing to add here. I think it's important that when you're listening to that type of comments, do not pay attention to them. Do not put your focus there, because it doesn't matter what other people are saying. What matters is what you believe about yourself and who you want to be. So people can say anything, but it's only through your own worth that you will prove that these things are not right. I think it doesn't even make sense to, talk about that. So just don't put your attention there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
There is another section later on down there in the canteen. You can have some network. If you have any other questions, please feel free to ask to everybody. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.